Trayvon Martin stands in the tradition of Emmett Till. Emmett Till stands as a proxy for millions of black bodies, male and female. But what Emmett Till's mother, what Emmett Till did was she didn't simply bask in, wallow in social misery. It's kind of like when John was exiled to Patmos. He ain't asked why he got there. He didn't complain to his God about why he was sitting there. He didn't merely reflect and lament his positionality as being exiled. No, he asked a question and began to produce something else, a new kingdom. That's the work we have to do. We have to not simply look at what we have in front of us as a social tragedy, but we must also begin the work of preparing the world that is not yet. You see, because when Emmett Till died, that could have just been a moment. Y'all with me? That could have just been a moment. Could have easily been a moment. We always have moments. Troy Davis was a moment. Tookie Williams was a moment. Millions of people before Emmett Till were moments. But you all have the opportunity to do what Mamie Till did. You all have the opportunity to replicate what the best freedom fighters of our tradition have always done. They took a moment and turned it into a movement. And that's what y'all have to do. That's what we have to do. We have to turn this moment into a movement. How you do that though, right? That's hard. Because a movement, you can't, if you're trying to turn this moment into a movement, you can't just wear your hoodie. I mean, rocking a hoodie is cool, but you can't make a movement out of a hoodie. You can't make a movement out of hashtag Trayvon. You can't make movements from your dorm room. At least not those kind of movements. You can make others. At your age, they don't last long. But movements are something else. Movements require you all to do more work. Movements require you to engage in a kind of deep analysis. I kind of told y'all that you got to have a sense of history for this stuff anyway, right? You got to look at history and see the parallels, right? You got to see the parallels in Emmett Till. So when people talk about Emmett Till, you understand that as a form of terrorism, right? So that when folk get on TV or walk around your school talking about Al-Qaeda and, you know, the Taliban, you can say, yeah, they terrorist groups, but the biggest terrorist group in American history is not Al-Qaeda, it's the Ku Klux Klan. It's the police. That's terrorism. Some of y'all drive cars. Most of y'all got legal cars. At least half of y'all got all your paperwork. I had my paperwork for like 8 years now. Them blue lights go up in the back, I still get scared. My heart still beats fast. I still wonder what the night is going to bring. That's terrorism. Terrorism is about the threat of what could happen, just as much as it is about what does happen. And so, you got to have that sense of history, but you have to be willing to analyze the world on its own. So y'all at Lincoln University, y'all have the sharpest tools. Y'all got the brightest minds. Y'all have the best professors. Y'all have the greatest leadership. You are in a position to deeply unpack, analyze, and make sense of the world. So that you can understand that Trayvon is not just an incident, it's not just an isolated case, but rather Trayvon Martin represents what it means for black folk in America to never be fully appreciated or valued in public space. That's why if you're in Philadelphia, or you in Atlanta, or you in New York City, and you see these curfew laws, you say, oh, wait a minute. This is the same thing. These laws literally make it illegal to be young and outside. Black bodies ain't allowed on the street. y'all listen to hip-hop, hip-hop emerged largely because of the exclusion of black folk from what? Public space. Oh, you ain't gonna let me stand on this corner? Well, I'm going to scar public tissue anyway through my graffiti. I can't be allowed on the New York subway trains, Taki 185. I'm going to put my name on this subway car. Oh, I'm not allowed to physically stand here. Well, you're going to hear my music. I'm going to pull out the biggest radio I can find. And you're going to hear me even if you can't see me. Black folk have always responded to the exclusion of public space by turning something that was an unfortunate incident into something that is redemptive. It's what Melville Herskovitz calls the deification of accidents. You take something that is unexpected and undesirable and you reincorporate that into the grammar of your everyday activity. I meant to do that. That's what black folk have done, but it's always been in response to what? The exclusion of black bodies from public space. Even Zimmerman himself, he speaks to a tradition of white folk who think that they have not only the right to be in public. Remember, Zimmerman wasn't the police. He was another citizen, but of course, oftentimes in America, white folk are taught to believe that they have a heightened state of citizenship. That I can ask you where you're going and what you're doing and where you're coming from, why you're there, even though I work at UPS, not the police. There's a certain sense that's possible because black folk have never been welcome in public space. And if you think it's been bad for black men, think about how bad it's been for black women. Think about what it means, and this is important for y'all brothers. Think about how dark and dangerous a space the public sphere has been for black female bodies. At least brothers can hang on the corner, right? We can hang on the corner, talk shit, rap. Black female bodies have never been even allowed on the corner. There's a consistent narrative about what it means for black women to even be near a corner. For black women on the corner, she's what? Buying drugs, prostitute, right? Whatever she's doing there, she don't belong there. The public sphere has never even welcomed black female bodies, even if they have the smarts to not stand on the corner, at least the smarts within the logic of that argument, and they simply walk on by. Black female bodies are subject to what? Street harassment. From the moment you are 10 or 11 or 12 years old, from the moment you develop any sort of bodily features that might be reflective of womanhood or proto-womanhood, the very moment you walk out on that street, there are men who are 13, 14, 15, 27, 37, 87, 107, yelling at you, calling at you, screaming at you, objectifying you, disrespecting you, and even if you walk by and ignore them, they say, well, F you then, I don't want you anyway, you're not that cute. Went to another great HBCU, Fisk University, before going to Harvard. They made him do 4 years at Fisk before he could get a bachelor's degree at Harvard. He got one from Fisk, got one from Harvard, then went over to Berlin, University of Berlin, went to pursue a PhD. They wouldn't let him finish because they was racist, gave it everything but the dissertation, went back to Harvard and got the PhD from Harvard, the first Negro to get a PhD from Harvard. Wrote Suppression of the African Slave Trade in 1896. Wrote Souls of Black Folk, wrote Philadelphia Negro. (1899) wrote Souls of Black Folk in 1903, wrote the magisterial tome Black Reconstruction in 1935, and when he wrote those texts in 25 more, he wrote 3 autobiographies, completely changed the way we think about social science, created sociology, essentially created urban sociology of the Philadelphia Negro, reimagined Marxist historiography with black reconstruction, created an entirely different way of thinking about what it meant to be black and what it meant to be human. He created the NAACP, was the original model of the activist intellectual. When he dies on August 27th, 1963, the night before the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, when he dies the night before, he's merely a footnote. They say the old man has died. He dies an expatriate. He dies an enemy of the state. He dies in Ghana, and even before he left the United States, he would walk around trying to visit his friends, trying to find some level of support, and he would knock on their doors and no one would answer. And as he walked down the hall, walked down the walkway, he would hear the blinds flick up and they check to see that he was leaving. See, this is what happens when you live a life of truth and when you live a life of justice. You live a life when you commit yourself to being marginal, what Edward Said calls self-imposed marginality. You make a commitment to being othered. You make a commitment to being hated. You make a commitment to being disrespected and denied. You make a commitment to being questioned. You make a commitment to saying that I don't care what the world throws at me, I'm going to struggle for freedom anyway. If you want to turn this moment into a movement when Trayvon ain't popular no more, that's what you'll do. When police brutality ain't on the front page anymore, that's what you'll do. You'll make a commitment to being free, and you'll love freedom more than you'll love being popular. But you see, freedom talk ain't just about telling the truth to those in power. The charge of turning moments into movements, the fulfillment of your generational destiny doesn't just come when you tell the truth to your opponents. See, the real test of courage and truth and strength and justice is to tell the truth to yourself. Every single one of y'all goes through this world, and y'all probably lie to somebody every single day, but the most dangerous thing you can ever do is lie to yourself. About who you are, about what you are, about who we are, about what we are. You see, we can talk about Trayvon, yes. We can talk about the execution of black male bodies at the hands of white overseers. But we could have a hell of a conversation and a lot thicker of an analysis, perhaps, if we talked about all the black bodies that die every single day at the hands of other black bodies. 95% of us are killed by us. And they fit the same demographic as the ones being killed. The shooters and the shot fit the same demographic. They're poor, they're young, they're black. And we can talk about the economic circumstances that create that kind of condition, because we can. We understand that poverty produces crime. We see that. We understand that white folk have a different safety net, and certainly middle class and wealthy folk have a different safety net. But beyond all of that, there's a question that circulates that can't ever be ignored, and that is, what are we going to do about it? When we stand in this room right now and we talk about the death of Trayvon Martin, what are we willing to do about the black men and women who are executed on the street by each other? What does it mean for white supremacy to have seeped into our heads at such a rate that when I see you, I see my enemy? That when you walk down the street, I see you as a means and not an end. What does it mean for young black men to court death in that way? What does it mean to help people pursue death in that way? Part of being a truth teller and part of creating moments and turning them into movements is to be able to tell the truth about yourself and accept responsibility. Now the problem is, we live in a world where Republicans talk about responsibility in a certain kind of way. They say you should be responsible instead of getting heat. Republicans say you should be responsible instead of getting a living wage. You should be responsible instead of having access to health care and housing. That you should be able to just behave your way into prosperity. But we all know good behavior don't do that. If good behavior were all you need to be okay, black folk would have never been enslaved. You need some other stuff, but even when you get that stuff, you have to be willing to make changes. So when you turn your moments into movements, y'all need to walk around this campus and say, wait a minute. We doing some stuff on this. This is an all-black campus. There's some white folk, but ain't that many white folk on this campus. What are we doing to create a campus climate like this? What are we doing to reduce the violence on this campus? What are we doing to increase the intellectual community that's here? When are we going to Chester, PA or Philadelphia, PA and talking to these young men who are right on the brink of going into violence instead of going into college? What are we doing about that? Yes, we need government grants. Yes, we need support from the state. But we also can leave right now and make a commitment to supporting somebody. Young black men right now, young black women right now are less likely to commit suicide, get HIV/AIDS, become teen parents, and drop out of school if they have a mentor or a coach. If they have an after-school program or an arts program, y'all can go do that now without $1 from the government, as talented as y'all are.